Good evening and welcome to Literature in 60 Minutes. I'm Zandile Pooe and today we are talking natural chemistry. The title of the book whose author we are talking to today is Natural Chemistry and Intellectual Property Stories, Navigating Romance, Rights and Religion. We are going to be talking to Vuyisile Hobololo, who is the author, just after the break. Please stay tuned.
Walking in Love. We love gospel music. Zoe Live Radio. The abundant life experience. Zoe Live Radio. The abundant life experience.
So welcome back, and today, like I said, we are talking to Vuyisile Hobololo, and his book is titled Natural Chemistry and Intellectual Property Stories, Navigating Romance, Rights and Religion. Welcome, Vuyisile. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Sandy, for having me.
Awesome. So, first of all, I'd like us to get to know you a little bit better. So, who is Vuyisile, the man behind the book? Who are you when you are not an author?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm a township boy. I grew up in Tanzania, a township near East London.
Mm-hmm.
Brought up by Christian parents. Also spent a lot of my youthful days in student church ministry, what we used to call the Student Christian Movement, and later on the SO, Student Christian Organization. So I that's basically my background and upbringing, but I grew up, got married, and I'm now have a wife and 3 kids. So I'm a sibling with 2 other kids. So basically that's me.
Awesome. But what do you do?
Oh, okay. I work within the innovation space. I was initially trained to be a scientist, worked as a scientist for some time, then developed an interest in intellectual property law. Mm-hmm. So worked in commercialization of intellectual property or in management of innovation. So that's basically what I do. Currently, for example, I work for the Technology Innovation Agency. So I head one of the business units which deal with the technology investments.
Oh, I see. Okay. So I think that's part of the title of your book, correct? Because you have a very interesting title and it's got a legislative ring to it and it's got a religious ring to it. So tell us how you decided to title your book.
Yeah, it's all based on things that I think fascinate me, exposures that I've had. As I said, that I've been trained as a scientist, so it talks of natural chemistry. So marriage is one type of relationship in life, I think, that fascinates me, that I have a passion for. And also intellectual property is a field of practice I've been exposed to and that I still am involved in. So I've been looking at parallels between the two. So in the book, I try to fuse the 2 elements, maybe to use maybe marriage as which is a concept that is known by almost everyone, or that we're all familiar with, to try to bring maybe people to some understanding of what happens within the how similar or of the parallels that exist between that and the field of intellectual property practice. So as I say, it's based on those 2 passions that I have, which is marriage as a relationship and intellectual property as a day job.
Okay, so your book is quite extensive, and you have some stories that you've shared within it. So what I want to know is, did you do a literature review of maybe different marital relationships and your background? What was your process of putting the book together?
Okay, the process of putting the book together, yes, entailed a lot of research from my side. A lot of because the book also is what I can't deny. It's written from a biblical perspective, because that's my orientation. I'm a Christian, so I try to try to put out the product that another Christian boy, another Christian woman, or any other person who believes in Christian principles would be able to use. So it's something that is relatable to all members of society, I believe. But as I say that, my research entailed looking into the Bible. What does the Bible say about the things that I talk about? What does other people who have, yes, there was a lot of research that I've done, for example, depending on the specific topic that I talk about. For example, if I address issues of feminism or issues of equality, I've tried to research so that this is not written, from
an anecdotal
perspective that is ignorant about what is happening in other spheres of life. So it's a very balanced type of an output, which is a product of research, prayer, and revelation.
Yes, no, definitely.
Yes.
I got that sense when I was reading it. So now, how long did it take you from deciding, okay, I'm writing a book and putting the manuscript together and finally getting it published?
Oh, okay. For me, it has been a long process. I must say. Actually, I think I maybe I over prepared for this. If there is anything like that for this book, but there's a lot of content, maybe equivalent to what I've published, that I decided I couldn't publish as one book together with this. So I started writing on this topic, I think 5-6 years ago.
Wow.
And I lost. I remember when I was changing jobs, I think end of 2015 to 2016, I already had a book. And I think I lost information. So this helped me get new perspectives on how rethink stuff that I wrote, research stuff that was no longer included there. But even when I decided to publish it last year, there's still a number of chapters that I decided maybe would go into the next volume. So for me, yes, there was that kind of research, but it took me, I think, a bit of time. It was also my first book, so I think it's advised preparation time. I think I should be able to put out a book in a shorter period than I did.
Okay.
I think I was too careful to
I think also first time jitters. You were like, do I do it? Don't I do it? How is it going to be received? Because all of those things play a role in how you sort of end up, what kind of product you end up putting out there. But it's a very substantial book, like I said, and it's got such rich substance. So now getting into the book, one of the things that I got out of it is that you had such a fun relationship with your primary school teachers. And I just want to have you share, because you never know who's going to listen at some point, what sort of impact did they have in your life?
Okay, okay. It should be high school teachers. Yes, as I said that I spent. I was raised by my parents. I think in our family home, maybe until I was 11 when I went to high school and boarding school. So when I got to that environment, there were teachers who led the student Christian church, or what we call the student Christian movement. So they were de facto parents. They parented us, during the time that we were there, and only saw our parents really when they came to visit or during holidays. Yeah. So they really played a very important role, because I personally got born again when I was in high school, even though I'd been raised by Christian parents and had been exposed to Christianity and salvation. But I intentionally gave my life to Christ under the leadership of these teachers. So we had a very beautiful relationship. Even outside the SEO, just how the school I went to was managed. All of us, including people who really had nothing to do with the SEM or Christianity, we really had a parent-child relationship. I think in how the school was managed, and we still have a huge alumni, community. Still have relations with those teachers. So that was the family, my other family that I think I got introduced to. So whenever I think of what I always, that is a part of my life that I can't forget about. People who are my friends today, been my friends for very long. I've met them, from that school, and some later, of course, but that school and the teachers we met there really added a lot to what we were to become.
Wow. And these days, to be young and male and Christian is a very rare combination. So what do you think? Because you mentioned being part of a grouping that was very zealous in the faith, especially in high school and in your youth days. It's not something that is so common anymore. So what do you think has changed?
It's very difficult to tell, to be honest. To say it can't just be one thing. Yeah. But also, I think to a large extent, generally how we live our lives as parents. Maybe access to resources today give us a lot of options, and as a result, we are not as prayerful with the decisions that we make. For example, if you have to decide where you take your child to school, for example, for many parents, even Christian parents, it's a budget question. It's a financial decision. Somebody looks at can I afford? But it's hardly ever a decision that comes out of serious inquiry from God. Where exactly do I want to take my child? Because we say, and it comes from a good place, because we want our kids to be exposed and to get the best. And if we think we can afford the best, we think that is the right decision. That is the right place that we can. Somebody, for example, whom God would want, if you live in Sandton and God would want your child to attend high school in Alex, for example, it would really, I don't know what it would take, for God to convince a parent who lives in Sandton to do that. And it doesn't mean that it cannot be in God's plan. But our parents, I think, because there was maybe they didn't have that much access, to resources. I think they were more prayerful and they were more listening to God, and they took a lot of decisions, as guided by God. I'll make an example. We were a young group at that time. High school, I must have finished high school at about 16. But at that time, when I look at how we raise our kids in Sunday school, at 13, 14, 15, as we're very young, as teenagers, early teens, we in the student Christian movement, we're able to hold the open air gatherings where we evangelize and preach the word of God. We're independent Christians. Yeah. The level of maturity and what we expect from our kids. And when we look at how we're raising our kids, and you would expect us to be able to have done more, but we've achieved more in other respects. But at a spiritual level, I don't think that my children even myself, I don't think that my children, are maturing at a rate that Christians back then, or even myself back then, was able to. But with that kind of background, I should be able to impart to them much more. But I don't think I've been able to do that. So as I say, I can't tell you what exactly it is, but I think one of the reasons really is that I think our parents sought God and sought to hear from God and sought to parent us in a way that was in line, with what God desired for us, maybe than we are able to do for our parents. As I say that, I mean, this is just my view. I could be wrong, but I'm just looking at two different products. I mean, if we talk advancement, we should be able to see it at all levels. It should not be about me being able to take my kid to a more expensive school than my parents were able to, but it should be at all levels. And unfortunately, when you look at the spiritual maturity or spiritual growth of our children, we can't claim to be doing half of what our parents were able to impart to us 20 years ago or longer.
Because you made an interesting point there to say that our parents modeled it differently for us. So we are modeling it differently for the next generation, which is why maybe we don't see as much maturity, like you mentioned, as we do, or you had in your generation. And then the upcoming generation has less maturity by virtue of what we are imparting to them. So it then points back to us. Essentially.
Yeah, it points back to us. As I say, also it could be unfair. Maybe also the pressures that today's parents have. I'm not saying we're not doing what we're supposed to do. It's a different time altogether.
Yeah.
And also there are also other levels. I mean, of maturity at an intellectual level, and many others that when I look at my kids and I look at myself back then, I say these kids are advanced than I was.
True.
But as I say that we can't take our kids, even if you were to go to church and say, do we believe that our kids between the age of 15 and whatever, we can't give them that responsibility, that people of their age, 20, 30 years back, would be able to. Okay. But as I say that, maybe somebody also might say that life, maybe back then was not as balanced. But as I say, I don't want it to sound like I'm passing judgment on today's parents. And that's why I keep on saying that even when I look at my kids, I feel that maybe there's something more that I should be able to
instilled in them. Yeah.
At that level.
Yeah, I agree with you. Because it gets difficult, and with the pressures of modern day society and the pace of our careers and just how we are living is very different. The pressures of people spending more time on social media versus on things that are really making a difference in their lives. So. Yeah, yes. I agree. But now let's get into the marriage part, because essentially your book is about coming to the marriage relationship and leading up to it in the courtship process. Do you think that, not do you think, I know what you think based on what you've written in your book, but the naivety we have being young and married, nah? Do you think we go into marriage with these rose-colored glasses that, we think it's all going to be all nice and rosy and great? What do you think about you being young and going into marriage?
Yeah, well, in my book, I emphasize that the importance of self-knowledge. Yeah. Before one makes that decision, because if one doesn't know and fully understand themselves, it becomes difficult for them to be able to measure, determine if the next person is suitable for them or not.
Yes.
So that is one of the points that I try to register through the book, and you are right. I mean, many cases. I mean, especially as in African culture, we are raised, especially women. We are raised, or a girl child has been raised. I can't confirm if that has changed, but with this understanding that they are being prepared for marriage. When they are taught to cook, it's not about them being able to prepare a meal for themselves, but they are told that a girl child must be able to cook because the husband and the children will expect them to. Whether that girl child has got an interest in having either, that's not a question. The thinking is always that you must be able to fit that role of a wife and be able to perform A, B, and C. So for many people, we always look at that as the end of, the end of life, but as this main goal, that if we're able to attain, then we have achieved what our purpose was about. And unfortunately, that's not reality. So many people think or have thought of marriage in a different light than we're supposed to. And as a result, it's been this thing that we so desire, that we sometimes make the decision to commit to without doing the necessary due diligence, one, on what would work for us, on who we are, whether we're ready at that time. Is the other person ready? Is the other person the appropriate a fit for us? Not much work sometimes goes into that, and as a result, we sit with troubled unions.
And you also speak very strongly on self-identity, because knowledge of self is a principle, like it's primary as well as an awesome principle to go into marriage with. But then now, do you think that's one of the main foundational flaws of why so many marriages are going, downhill, or like you're saying, troubled unions as well as divorces ultimately, because people don't know themselves very well, and based on the type of life phase that they are in, they identify with themselves in a particular way. So do you think that's maybe one of the foundational flaws, that people, because they go into marriage not knowing themselves quite well, then they end up expecting someone else to understand them and to love them, but they don't really know what it is that they want, essentially?
Yes, that is part of the problems, and but also what I also acknowledge in the book is that it is important, as a starting point for me to know who I am and to know what would work for me. But the truth of the matter is that who we are when we get married and who we get to be as we grow old, whoever you meet is in an evolving, form. You're gonna experience a different person with time, because they get exposed to different knowledge, different experiences, and also by virtue of relating with you, sometimes you encourage certain responses, from them. But the main thing, I think, which is which I also say in the book, it's that what would make marriage work, even when the decision has not been perfect, is that of going in there with a heart that is not selfish, because love is not selfish. It doesn't look for its own interests only, but the Bible says we must consider others better than ourselves, consider the interests of others as well, and also within the context of marriage, it encourages us also to be considerate, towards to bear with one another. So because because marriage is a love relationship, when there is enough love, the Bible again says love covers a multitude of sins.
Yeah.
Yes, we are able to deal with all these, but sometimes the challenge is that people are, especially in the chapter that where I talk about socialization.
Yes.
Sometimes I go into this marriage because as a closer man, I was told that a woman has to do A, B, C, D, and has to do it in this way. And now I blindly take that maybe with less grace and want to make sure that, my wife does this as my culture dictates it, in the way that my culture dictates, without even being considerate, of what is possible given the realities around who she is and what is possible within our marriage. And now, if she's not able to do those things the way that I want her to do them, then I regard her as inadequate, and sometimes it collapses marriages. So that's why I'm saying that there's an element of grace, there's an element of love that is supposed to underline that kind of a relationship, because even myself, I need the same from them, because the person that I got married to, or that I got married being, I'm sure today must have seen a certain level of evolution, and I still expect my wife to put up with that, even though it's not what she signed up to, X number of years ago. So I need that grace, and she needs that grace from me. So that's why I'm saying that when there's love, when there's no selfishness, and when there's love and more grace, we're able to put up, with each other through the changes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I like the term you're using, to put up, because then you have an entire section on Begezela, specifically Begezela, and it is quite the controversial subject, especially one received with much animosity, especially on social media, Twitter to be specific, and you speak of it in a manner that you are inquiring as to where is this discourse taking us, because we see that in society we have developed such an intolerance for each other, and is that intolerance now cascading down to the level of the nuclear family?
Yes, thanks, and yes, that is my observation. Unfortunately, this is where the feminist movement, I'll say, is the feminist movement. I mean, has been very emphatic, on how outdated the concept of Begezela is.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's a concept that has been cast in a negative light, in the sense that maybe many people have used it when we are saying, no, a woman must endure, a woman must put up with stuff that they perhaps are not supposed to.
Yeah.
But what I try to do in that chapter is to say both a man and a woman, both a husband and a wife, have got shortcomings by virtue of them being human.
Yes.
So those shortcomings manifest themselves also in how they relate to each other as spouses. And I further go on to say, because of that, each of them needs or requires a certain level of grace for another.
Yes.
From one another for the marriage relationship to continue. Then I further go on to say, but what is it that deserves of that kind of grace? Then I I think I talk about three different areas, or maybe three different categories of stuff that people have to put up with. One, I talk about stuff that is criminal. For example, behavior that is criminal, which would include, for example, physical assault, which would include any which would be a violation, for example, on the wife or sometimes even on the husband by the wife. But in many cases, of course, we have had and we have seen more men murdering, assaulting, and doing all these kinds of
violent
species
acts.
of what we call gender-based violence. Exactly.
Yes.
So there is that part, and that I am very specific and clear in the book that is criminal, and it's something that is punishable by law. Then I go on and I say I will go to another category of acts that are not legally wrong or that are not illegal, but that are sinful in terms of biblical standards. I talk about adultery. You can't charge someone in a court of law for adultery, but it's a form of abuse.
Yes.
Because the other person feels violated. Exactly. So it's a form of violation. It's also a kind of emotional abuse. It's abuse in different levels. But as I say, that no court of law, will sit on that case. And I say that it's something that God is not happy about. It's something that God has got an issue with. Even though maybe in society people might have different justifications for it. And then I talk about another category of acts which are purely based on, I think the first one I talked about, which talks about the fallibility that we have as human beings, where even a well-meaning husband or well-meaning wife will offend you, just because they're human. So in all, for marriage to continue to work, one must be able to choose, what is it that I'm going to put up with? Is it fair to say I can't put up with fallibility that my wife has by virtue of her being human? Is it fair? When I also have my own infallibilities, they might not fall within these categories. Of course, they might not be criminal, and they might not be unbiblical. But as I say, that her experience of living with me, we will leave her not maybe unimpressed about certain things, about me leaving my shoes where I'm not supposed to, about
Yes.
Exactly. And sometimes those things affect, the marital relationship. But as I say, that it's important, to bear with one another. But as I say, that this should not get to the level of abuse, because there is a difference between abuse and the kind of fallibility that I said that we all have by virtue of us being human.
I think another important aspect that you raise, especially now that you're talking about individual fallibility, is the subject of individual socialization. And you speak of how it can pose as a threat to the oneness, that marriage unions are supposed to represent. So can you please unpack, I think, that subject of individual socialization, because I think it then leads to this fallibility that you're talking about.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I talk about regarding our socialization is that it's very important for one to understand is socialized, so that they are able to determine if this is the person that they would want to live with or to marry.
Yes.
Because I'll make an example. If somebody, one of the biggest problems in marriages today, it's what I call gender politics. Some men were raised in a society that told them that the place of a woman or a wife is in the kitchen.
Yes.
The woman has no business regarding any other decision that is made in the household. And now other women, okay, that's
okay. So you were talking about the fact that we have individual fallibilities. So do you think that how we are socialized, individual socialization that you talk about in your book as well, has a lot to do with the fallibilities that we have? And then in terms of the married couples, how can we better be united and have that oneness that we are supposed to have, like become the one flesh that we are meant to become in marriage?
okay. No, I think, and this is what I say in the book, that it's quite important that in self-knowledge and in understanding who one is, in the process of making that determination on whether they are ready to get married and whom they should be marrying, who would make a better fit to them. It is important that you don't overlook, actually pay careful attention to one socialization and also of that person that they would like to marry. An example that I make is that my observation, and also, I mean, there's a lot of statistics that will tell us that one of the challenges that that marriages face, in the 21st century, is that of they're rooted in the different orientations, ideologies we have around gender politics.
Yes.
A man or one man might be raised in a society where they were told that a woman's place is only in the kitchen, and a woman cannot contribute intellectually and otherwise, to the running of the household. Now, that is what society, for example, what culture, tradition would say. Then you go to church for Christians or maybe in another religion, then you are told that actually the man is the head of the household. Even now, for many women, such assertions are problematic.
Yes.
Some Christian women, and even some women who are not Christians, who live in the 21st century, do not understand, what's the basis of this headship of a husband.
Yeah.
Because the Constitution, for that matter, tells us that we're all equal, for all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
And that's why the feminist movement as well advocates for that. Relationships, romantic relationships, or even life in general is supposed to be lived in a way that recognizes equality between the two genders. Now, what I say in the book and what I also advise people is that it's important that you understand the person. There are women who get married still in this century who may be Christians or not, based on their socialization, we expect some kind of leadership from the husband that they marry. There are women who don't expect that. So it is quite important that you are clear, of each other's orientation, each other's expectation insofar as that is concerned, so that at the end you don't live in a relationship where, when as a husband you think you are playing your God-ordained role, you are viewed as imposing, cultural stereotypes. And also what that means. I think this is also something that I say in the Bible, that in the book, that this is what also men need to be educated, what that means. Does that mean being a head, you must bully, wife does this, or what exactly does this mean? Exactly. What exactly does this mean? So many men are not educated about that. Instead, they take what society has taught them and try to to find biblical basis for it through what the Bible registers as headship. So it's an area that both men and women, needs to be educated on. But as I say, that if there is no agreement or common understanding between yourself and the person that you want to marry, it is important that you proceed with caution.
Yes.
Because this is going to be your life. So if the person that you're marrying, is so liberated that, or they are from a completely different culture for that matter, and they were not socialized in that way. If you get into that kind of a relationship, or into that kind of a marriage, you must know that for it to be sustainable, you have to exercise, your beliefs, as I say, with caution.
And when it comes to you personally, I mean, your book has your spiritual journey, from your birth to your development in the faith, woven so beautifully into the chapters of your book. And I just want to find out from you, do you think that your spirituality is the critical success factor in your own marriage?
Yes, I think for me, it's a component of my life that has helped me. But I always am weary, to talk of successful marriages, because marriages, we work them every day. I wouldn't want to say, I'm a model of a successful marriage. I wouldn't want to say that, but I think that my marriage has worked, or has been lived through the time that I've been married until now, partly because, or maybe mainly because I've embraced the principles that the Bible has put forth.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that I have done that flawlessly, but what the Bible says about marriage, I to me, makes a lot of sense, and that's why I'm saying that the principles that we see there, I mean, when the Bible says love your wife, it's a biblical principle, or it's a biblical principle for marriage, but more than anything, it's a marriage it's a principle for a successful marriage. So it does not mean that, this applies. It's not only a wife who is a Christian who expects or who needs to be loved. A wife who's an atheist, by virtue of them being somebody's wife, and by virtue of them being in a marital relationship, if that husband to that woman, fails to do that, then the marriage will experience, a problem. So that's why I'm saying that I'm just using that as an example. That the principles that the Bible gives to us about how to run families, I think are very important. They're very useful for any person who intends to get married, or for any person who is married, for that matter.
Okay. And I think because now we've spoken to the other side of union, which is the marriage itself. But now take us back to before you get married. You speak of identification, okay? And you did such meticulous work in explaining and detailing the process of identification. So if you, without going into too much detail so that people at least want to read your book and get the full picture, can you just take us through that, the process of identification?
Okay. There are many ways of answering this question, but allow me to just zoom into this specific one. That one of the challenges I think that we have when we decide on whom to marry is that we would look only at one aspect of a person and not at the whole being. And I think what I talk about is how we are made of a body, soul, and spirit.
Yes.
And unfortunately, for example, for people who will meet in church, for example, religious environments usually will put more emphasis, sometimes exclusive emphasis or focus on the spirituality of a person. So if, for example, you are impressive, maybe as a spiritual being, maybe as a preacher or as whatever that you do in church, sometimes people feel that is the only box that needs to be ticked, even if you have other issues.
Yeah.
For example, at the level of your soul, we never drill deep, into, and other people are impressed just by the body, by how people look.
Yes.
And they never make an inquiry, into their spirituality, and they never make an inquiry also into their soul, because maybe that's what people are going to see. They're going to see, is this wife beautiful enough? Is she tall enough? Is she, does she tick all these boxes that society has prescribed for us? If the more she looks like a model, society will say that the better maybe a wife you have. But and that is just one of the challenges that we have, that we never look at the whole person, and as a result, unfortunately, no matter how impressive you are in any of these three spheres, if there are deficiencies in the two others, then there's going to be a problem, because when you live within marriage, you live with the whole person. So that is just one of the issues, I think, that I highlight, that it's very important that we make an informed decision by not only being deceived by how well people impress us spiritually, or how well their bodies are impressive to us, or how well maybe this or that aspect of their lives, but must be able to make a decision that is informed by us, at least having some appreciation of how each component of who they are works or augurs with us.
Yes. And another aspect of that is the aspect of suitability, right? And how it does not guarantee the lack of conflict in a relationship, despite how suitable you may be. So now I think in romantic relationships, there is challenges, but then in society, the greater society, you have cancel culture, which is a growing phenomenon where people just, write you off for the smallest of reasons. So now, do you think that cancel culture is also finding its or seeping its way through into romantic relationships, where people are just quickly willing to look for a way out as soon as, the stardust wears off, for lack of a better term?
Yes, no, that is true, and I think it points to how wrong the reasons for us to want to get married sometimes can be.
Yeah,
because society again, teaches us that this is maybe something that we must do, or maybe something that one has to do at a certain stage, in their lives, and some people, it's for them it's okay to say yes, they've been there, and we are not. Sometimes we get into marriage not being as vested, as we should be, and if things do not go according to how we wish, then we say this is not working, with very little grace again, towards the next person, and towards just wanting to adjust sometimes what our mental expectation of how things should work should be. And we're not saying that people should really put up with stuff that is that they should not, or stuff that really reduces them to, or maybe that amounts to all these forms of abuse that we talked about. But just sometimes, yes, people go into marriage with very little grace. They expect things to be done in this way, as if they bring perfection.
Yes,
As if they bring perfection. Yes. Yeah. So people are very prescriptive. They want the person, they cannot be sometimes. Yeah. So and if the other person can't be that, then it's a problem. Or it's either the other person must die completely, and live, to satisfy whatever impression they came with, even though whatever they desire, what they aspire, what is important to them, has to, even if that means that those things that mean something to them have to die completely, which I think is unfair, because the marital relationship is supposed to be a fulfilling experience to both spouses, and the other, it's not supposed to exist just for one person to fulfill, whatever interests they came with, or whatever interests they developed along the way. But it's supposed to be a fulfilling a relationship both ways, and more importantly, to God.
Yeah, and you speak of disclosure, because in leading up to the marriage phase or during courtship, how you decide to then pursue the one who has caught your eye, or I don't know, other forms of interests that you may have. So now when it comes to disclosing that, you make such humorous examples about disclosure in a secular format or secular context, as well as disclosure in a sacred context, in terms of if you are in the church. So can you take us through some of those examples that you were making?
Oh, okay. Well, around disclosure, for example, stuff that I talk about, I talks to different systems, or let's say environments, different systems that different churches, for example, or religious environments create for their members. For example, the church I grew up in had a system, or still has a system, that they expect young people or unmarried people to follow when they want to get married. That you go, for example, to the pastor, and the pastor schedules an appointment between yourself and the person you want to propose to, and so there's that predefined way that they expect this to happen, and that's what has been happening,
yes,
for ages. And I just bring that forth, for example, to say, isn't it time that maybe we have conversations with young people today who stand, or maybe who are of that age of wanting to get married, or maybe young people who are growing up today, to try to establish which of these elements, of that system are workable. What do we retain that makes biblical sense, if any, and if there's any innovations we need to do around that, what kind of such do we introduce? Because the main thing is that we need to have a system not that is just there, but that is used and which is workable for people who have to use it. Because in many churches, for example, as time goes on, you find that even though those churches would have all these systems, young people, who grow up today, will still meet where they meet, and they will come, for example, to tick a box and say, yes, pastor arranged this meeting for me, and this is just a formality to say this is what was done, and whatever purpose it was meant to serve, it does not really serve, because people have got a different way of doing things, and it's not to say that what was being done was wrong, but to say that this is what ordinary people who grew up today go through. And I think I put myself, to some extent, I think I do talk about some of the, so I say, challenges, experiences that I went through in the process of getting married. And I say maybe isn't it time that we relook and rethink, some of expectations that we have of that system. Should people be proposing, in within that setting, or how do we best manage that to make sure that, because again, we can't take away the fact that the thinking, it all came from a good place, because the intention, as I understand it, for example, would be that you are trying to protect their testimony. You want to make sure that you marry young people who are sexually pure, or at least who are not tempted to sin in the form of engaging in premarital sexual intercourse. That's what I believe that such systems were put in place for. But how do we achieve that, in a way that is practical, because that principle still remains. It is a biblical principle that we seek to protect, but is that the best way that you can get there, So that is some of the questions, I think, conversations that I put forth.
And you also address the issue of quasi-romantic relationships and the virulent church brothers, right? Because sometimes I think in the church setting and with that formalized structure that you talk about, there tends to be this tendency of church brothers who, have these church sisters on reserve, and it becomes a problem, because then sometimes life happens and they end up not marrying that girl that they had introduced to the pastor, and now some other girl comes in the church as the wife, and it becomes, a big question mark on the effectiveness of this disclosure system. So do you think that in that context, these quasi-romantic relationships are an effective way of bringing the intentions of the church brother who has certain intentions with the church sisters?
Okay, yeah, I'll say it all points us back to that what I'd spoken about before, that within the church environment, for example, I grew up in a conservative church space, for example, both within the student Christian movement and within the church that I grew up in, where the idea of premarital romance in the form of relationships was a no-no. It was something that was not even discussed. And unfortunately, whether you are willing to name those relationships, courtship or anything, people, when they interact and they meet and they talk, they will relate in some way.
Yes.
So what gets to happen, for example, because people know that it's sinful or it's not acceptable to have a relationship. When I say a relationship, I mean to have a romantic relationship. That doesn't stop, or that doesn't mean that people will not be attracted to one another. And in many cases, you would find that, the university campuses, even in churches, people would relate, would have friends, whatever they would call themselves. They would have these people that they see, talk to on a regular basis. And sometimes people would even impregnate each other. And when you inquire, you find that, no, these people actually were not a boyfriend and girlfriend, but these people have lived with these emotions for each other, and this other day or this other day and that other day, this got acted out in a particular way, and this is what then happened. So there is that's number one. Number two, there would be people also, guys who would just go with that kind of, an objective. People who, mischievous gentlemen who would go to church, knowing that, this kind of a system protects them because they cannot go there and be open about their intentions. But while they're going to go there, they'll go there and for lack of a better word, seduce, create those kinds of environments that enable them, to love and be loved, or maybe this sister or that sister to fall for them or to be comfortable with them in a certain way, in a way that even though there would be no pronounced exclusivity or no pronounced existence of a relationship, when this person hears that this person maybe is marrying somebody else, or this person relates in the way that they relate to them with the other person, that this person would be hurt. So such people would thrive in an environment, for example, that denounces dating or denounces courtship relationships, because as much as there are many pros and cons around dating and courtship, especially for people who are not matured enough to get married soon, the problem is that it's a system, that is really, really open, or that can be open to abuse, especially by people who have the wrong intentions, as we have given.
Yeah. And you spoke so beautifully about your relationship with your wife, Untutu, and you speak of how you guys, met each other. Your whole story is there, and it's quite beautifully narrated. Thank you so much for sharing that with the public, because I particularly enjoyed it. But now you speak of, I want to read the word specifically. You say that, I only knew just one thing, that the search was over. I had found the one. And those words flashed in my head like, the concept of the one is one that is much contested in society. And people have, differing views about it as to, is there such a thing as the one? Or, how did you know that she was the one? Because then it's a contested thing. Like, okay, what do you mean the one? There could be more than one. We can be suitable with more than one person. So how did you know that she was the one?
I think when people talk about the one, I think it's a concept that means different things. Yeah. I think to different people. But I don't, for me, when I write about that and making reference to my wife as as the one, for me, it just points to the level of comfort, the level of assurance, level of conviction that I had, that I did not need to look for another person. And that is the level of comfort that I still have now.
After this many years.
Of course, yes, after 17, 18 years.
Wow.
it's the conviction that I have. But as I say, I mean, people believe that there's not one person. I'm not sure, what they mean about that. Is it a justification for polygamy, or is it just an idea that should something happen to this person, should this person die, or should this person, or should things not work out, in the sense that should you get divorced to this person, does it mean that you cannot be able to get married again? I don't think that it means for me, as I say, I mean, it's the sense of conviction, sense of comfort that I feel, that I felt, and I don't know what would happen if my wife were to die. But of course, I don't exist or live in this relationship believing that, things would have been better with somebody else, or maybe shouldn't I be looking for a better person, maybe who would give me less of whatever I need to put up with, maybe that I could be getting from her. So for me, the concept or maybe reference to her as being the one, she is really the one person that I needed to marry, and I'm comfortable with that. I harbor no thoughts or ideas that my life could have been better, with somebody else. I have no such, but I'm not saying that should people's spouses die, or should people get divorced, or whatever happens, then it means that their lives end there. I cannot answer, for that. But for me, it's purely in reference to the level of comfort, the level of conviction that I had and that I still have.
Wow, I'm inspired by that. After 18 years, it's important for one to know that when they decided, when they made that decision that, you know what, I'm going into this and she is the one, and 18 years later, they are still claiming and professing that she's the one. So you chose well there. You really did.
Yeah, but as I say, maybe one thing I must say is that, as much as how I've written the book, I try to advise people to look out for this and that, or to take this and that into consideration. One other thing that I must acknowledge is that, I did not, you can't take out, the strong element, or maybe the very important factor that God's favor, God's favor is a huge part. Is a huge part. I mean, you could write all the textbooks, that people must, or maybe all the guidelines that people should follow. But I think that's why I was saying earlier on that when we choose to get married, yes, we know what we know about ourselves, we know what we know, but that knowledge again evolves. And whatever I knew about my wife, really, and whatever she knew about me, with time changes, and marriage is able to be possible because God continues to extend grace, God continues to extend favor. And I think more than anything, that is a very important factor that you cannot rule out. But you're not saying that people must do find a finder, hoping that the grace of God and God's favor with whoever I end up with, should be able to carry me through. But it's just to say that those things that are difficult for you as a person to put up with. And it doesn't mean that God can't carry you through those things, but at least don't make your life difficult for yourself. That, for example, that a wife who I don't know, who's got a certain lifestyle is a problem, or maybe will be a problem for you to live with. At least
identify right. At least, at the very least, identify right from the very beginning, so that you know that you are increasing your odds that God's favor will actually make life easier for you, versus you having, being in a relationship with someone who is not suitable for you because you didn't identify right from the very beginning.
Yes. And sometimes, and it's not even the question of suitability, maybe, or sometimes it's purely it's like what causes people to leave all kinds of relationships, whether it's an employment relationship. Sometimes it's about you not being able to take what God is taking you through. So some of the challenges that you can foresee that might be too much for you, not because the grace of God can't take you through them, because there's a grace of God that is provided for us. But now each day there must be willingness from us to allow that to live through us. Sometimes we say enough is enough, and we say we don't care what provision God has for me. I think I've had enough of this. I'm not going to endure this kind of a thing. So it's that's why I'm saying that those things that that for you as a person might be difficult, to put up with. Try to be fair to yourself, because as I say that I believe that God can take us through very difficult circumstances, but situations. But sometimes we are just not available or just not willing, to put up with certain kinds of difficulties, with certain kinds of challenges.
Wow, that's very true, hey? Because the willingness is always an important factor.
Yes.
In anything in life. If you are not willing, no matter how good, the outcome might be, it won't be attractive enough for you to endure whatever the process is. Now, after these 18 years, you and your wife have come up with a beautiful literary calendar event, an annual calendar event called the Gumgani Book Fest. So tell us about that. How did you guys birth that baby together?
Oh, okay. Gumgani I lead first. We've had the inaugural offering this year. So it's an idea that we executed for the first time this year, but it's in a nutshell, it's a literary festival or book event that we plan to hold each year, where we bring together writers who are Christians or Christian writers, but not necessarily people who write on to Christianity, but people who write on different subjects. Some who write on leadership. For example, this year we had panels on leadership. We had one on finance. We had one on family issues of marriage, of raising children. We had one on women. So we had different panels, that talked to what that we believe that writers who are adding something to the life of a believer. So this is an event that we hope to have each year, but it's really open to everyone. The people don't have to be Christians to come in there, because it's content that we believe that deals with issues of life and that issues of purpose, issues of different categories. I think that we have. So we believe that it will. We believe that it will empower writers, for example, by giving them an opportunity to showcase their work, and give us also an opportunity to engage with different writers, ask, discuss maybe different contributions that are from different writers. So it's that kind of a platform that's going to encourage reading within and outside the church. And that's also going to encourage those people who have a gift of writing, maybe have not exercised it. Some people write and stop, like myself. I wrote for a long time before I actually wrote and published something. So it's meant to encourage people within and outside the kingdom of God to say, for example, if we need to be of support to one another, if we need to strengthen or sharpen each other one way or another on issues of writing and publishing, we are able to do that. So that's basically what we want to do.
Wow, sure, that's wonderful. I unfortunately could not attend the inaugural one, but I look forward to attending every single one moving forward. But thank you so much for your time. Can you please share with our audience how they can get a hold of your book and maybe some of your, details in case anybody wants to reach out to you?
Oh, okay. This is how the book looks like.
Yes.
Natural chemistry and intellectual property stories. So how you can get hold of the book, you can order the book.
How do people
order? You can order the book via our website. Yeah, via our website. This is, I'm not sure if you can see this, www.mamaliip.co.za.
Yes, okay.
Exactly. So you can be able to order it from there. Or you can use or you can send us a message on a telephone number.
Oh, okay.
So that those are different ways in which one can get the book.
With bookshelves, which bookshelves can they try and hunt it and find it at?
Oh, okay. We sell the book directly, but there's a bookshop that we in OM bookshop in Pretoria, Hatfield. So that's the bookstore that is stocking the book and that is selling it. But that is only in Pretoria. Otherwise, we distribute the book directly, I think, ourselves.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you coming on and telling us all about your book. It is a worthy read, so I trust that everyone will, who's listening, will buy a copy and give you feedback on what they thought about it.
Okay, no, thanks, Andy. Much appreciated.
Awesome. Okay, after the break, I will be closing off. Please stay tuned.
Zoe Live Radio, the abundant life experience. Marching to the beat of the Lord. Zoe Live Radio.
Welcome back. Okay, so that was such a fascinating discussion with Zandile about nuptial chemistry, his book. And I just found it interesting that he speaks about the subject of identification, because I think identification is an important element of relationships. A lot of the time, because we start wrong, things tend to end badly for us, and finding the right sort of criteria that we use for choosing the people that we are going to enter into the marriage relationship with makes a massive, massive difference in the outcome that we get to experience in our unions. But thank you so much for tuning in for this week. We will catch you again next week talking to another author. And next week is our very first book club meeting on the 31st, on Saturday, the 31st of July. So we look forward to that one as well. We are reviewing The Fire in My Bones by Nobuntu Webster. So those of you who will be joining me for that session, I look forward to it. But for this week, this is me signing off with you. Have a fruitful week, and may God bless you. Bye.